Hello everyone, this will be the 26th chapter of The Second Life of the Guardian, written and read by Insect Overlord. This chapter is titled Scars and Memories, and has content warnings for mentioned past self-harm and injuries. The day after Izuku's return was a Thursday. Usually that would mean he had to go to school, but his parents thought it best he took a few days off. He wasn't happy about the decision. He may not like school, but he needed the distraction. Plus, he wanted to see May. He tried to explain it to his parents, but they were unrelenting. He would stay home. The day was a quiet one, filled with Izuku and his mom teaching Eri about various items and foods. She was especially interested in apple-flavored things. His dad had tried to join them, but Eri was having none of it. She really didn't like him for whatever reason. The way he had scared her when he burst through the door while she and Izuku were switching her futon to the dryer, covered in ash and smelling like a campfire, certainly didn't help his case. On Friday, Izuku and Eri had scheduled therapy sessions. Izuku's sessions were typically on Tuesdays, but when his mom had called Oboro and filled him in, he insisted he come in. Because Izuku would already be there, his parents arranged a meeting with a potential therapist for Eri at the same time. They thought she would be more receptive if she knew Izuku was doing the same thing. Which brings him to where he sat in his usual comfy chair in Oboro's office, picking at a stray string. He had been trying to get him to talk about his kidnapping for 10 minutes, but Izuku was tired of talking about that. He had already reported everything to both the detective and Tiki. Why couldn't Oboro just ask them if he wanted to know so badly? "Your mom tells me you have a new sister. What's she like?" Oboro changed his approach. Izuku perked up. "She's the best. She's 3 or 4, and she's already more than half as tall as me, although that might just be because I'm short. Oh, and she likes apples, and her favorite color is green." Izuku listed off the most important information. This was something he could talk about. "She sounds nice, Izuku-kun." Oboro smiled. Izuku flapped his hands a bit to release his happy energy. He really loved having a little sister, even if he'd only known her for a few days. "She is! She's the cutest, and she has a cool quirk, but she's scared of it." He frowned and moved to sit on his hands as he rocked slightly from side to side. Overhaul told her it was a curse, and she's bad, but he's wrong. He's a jerk, or he was a jerk. He's dead now. He stated plainly and without remorse. F him. Oboro didn't scold him for his language or disrespect of the dead. He didn't want Izuku to censor himself around him. This was a space where Izuku was allowed to rant. If that meant the occasional curse, so be it. Izuku sighed and slumped back in his seat. Oboro was silent as Izuku rolled up his jacket sleeves, giving him a moment to speak up if he had something else to say. Izuku held his arms in front of himself and rotated them. "Is it weird that I don't mind having scars?" Oboro mimicked his posture and sat back. "No, it's not. Scars are a normal part of life. They mean that the body has healed from something and gotten stronger. Some people try to hide their scars, others wear them proudly. It depends on the person." Izuku looked at the scar over Oboro's eye and the ones on his arm. "And you? Do you want to hide your scars?" He tilted his head. Oboro paused for a moment before responding. "Sometimes," he said quietly. "But that's okay. Our feelings can fluctuate day to day and still be valid." Izuku nodded. That made sense. "I think," he started, staring off at the wall as if recounting a far-off memory. "I think I don't mind them as much because I'm used to them." "What do you mean? These are new, aren't they?" Oboro furrowed his brows, confused. "No, they are, but they're also not." Oboro just looked more confused. "I mean, I had a lot of scars as Marinette, especially after my miracle cure got all wonky," he clarified. He then grabbed a marker from the table and started drawing on his arms. "I had one from when I was impaled. That was my biggest one. I didn't mind it so much, but..." He looked up and sighed. "It meant I couldn't wear crop tops anymore. That really bummed me out. I had a few more big ones, but most of them were scratches. I was pretty good at not getting hit, unlike Cat Noir." He grumbled the last part. He used his marker to connect the stars with green vines. But those weren't my only scars. I also had some I gave myself. Oboro inhaled. He wasn't one to visibly react to his stories, so Izuku was surprised, though he understood. A child admitting they used to self-harm must be hard to hear. It was just a few times. I didn't make it a habit, he tried to reassure him. It was hard, okay? Everyone was against me, and I was supposed to protect them anyway. I didn't have a lot I could control. I could control that, though. Oboro looked at Izuku, eyes sharp and posture tense. Do you still hurt yourself? It doesn't have to be cutting. It could be things like scratching or telling yourself you don't deserve things. Izuku ran a hand down his face and groaned, accidentally coloring it a bit with the marker. He knew Oboro would do this if he brought it up. Still, he couldn't exactly blame him. He just wanted to make sure Izuku was safe. No, I don't do that anymore. It was stupid, and I know I shouldn't have, but I was stressed and needed something that was just for me to control. I haven't done it since I became Izuku, he reassured him, and really it was true. Izuku hadn't felt the itch in a long, long time. He was happy, and he had a family that actually spent time with him, and a friend who would never abandon him. Most importantly, though, he had control. The safety of the world didn't rest on his shoulders alone, and no one could manipulate him into carrying it ever again. Oboro looked relieved, but still cautious. I'm glad, Izuku-kun. Still, if that ever changes, you let me know, okay? Izuku rolled his eyes, but agreed. Whatever you say, old man. Hey, I'm only 28. When Izuku left Oboro's office, he met up with his mom and Eri in the waiting room. Eri was sitting in her lap as she read a book about horses to her. She had an awestruck look on her face. When she spotted Izuku, she cried out, "Oni-san!" and rushed over, grabbing a hold of his jacket and pulling him to Inko. "Look, you have to see this. Someone drew a picture of Callie," she exclaimed, pronouncing Kalki as Callie. Their mom raised an eyebrow. "Eri, hun, Izuku is your brother, not your sister." Eri stopped pulling him to look up at his face. She looked considering for a moment before shaking her head. "But she's my sister?" She tilted her head at their mom. Izuku just laughed. She was probably confused after he turned into Marinette. Eri must have taken her laughter the wrong way because her lips started to wobble. Izuku was quick to stifle his giggles and crouch in front of her. No, Eri, it's okay. I can be your sister if you want. Now, did you want to show me something?" Eri, like the child she was, quickly forgot about being upset and pulled Izuku over to the book. She pointed at the white horse and looked seriously at him. "It's Callie." She was right. The horse in the picture did look similar to Kalki's most recent form. It was white and had a flowing mane. "You're right, it does look like him." Their mom looked like she wanted to ask how they both knew a horse by name, so Izuku quickly came up with an excuse. "Kalki is our imaginary friend." He wasn't lying exactly. It's not like anyone else could see them unless they wanted to be seen. Plus, they were friends. Eri tilted her head at his explanation. "What's that?" "It's a friend with magical powers that comes when you call them." "Is Kalki magic?" "Yup, he's super magical." Inko watched their exchange, fruitlessly trying to understand, before she gave up with a sigh. "What did you think of your therapist, Eri?" Izuku asked as they headed to the car, their mom holding both of their hands. His breath puffed out in front of him like smoke. Eri thought for a moment before answering. "She was nice, I think. She gave me this." She held out a green stress ball. "Wow!" He drew out the word. Eri puffed her chest in pride. "Yeah." She was a lot more talkative than he was after his first therapy session. Actually, she was a lot more talkative than he'd seen her yet. Izuku hoped that was a good sign. Back home, Izuku showed Eri how to feed fish. "She gets 1 pinch a day. If I give her too much, she won't eat it all, and her bowl will get dirty," he explained carefully, sprinkling the food into the bowl. Eri stood, staring wide-eyed at the colorful bowl. "That's only a little bit," she commented. "Fish is a little fish. He shrugged. As they both watched Fish gobble up her lunch, Izuku thought of Eri's future. She was already opening up, and she'd only been here for 2 months. He knew recovery wouldn't be linear, that she would battle the demons of her past her whole life. He had been Izuku for 7 years, and he still struggled with his experience as Marinette. Still, Izuku was hopeful. He would do everything in his power to ensure she healed. Eri would never be alone again. This concludes Chapter 26 of The Second Life of the Guardian. I hope you guys liked this one. Like last chapter, I'm going to read some of my notes. Eri is still going to struggle throughout the story. It's not just going to be like, she's healed now that she has a good family, because she isn't. Recovery is a long process, so don't be surprised when she regresses at some points in the future, just like Izuku did. Also, Eri wasn't with Overhaul for as long as she was in canon. Since she would only have gone to him after she developed her quirk, and she's only 3 to 4 years old, she would only have been in the compound for 6 months to a year. I'm using this as my justification as to why she's adapting to her new home so fast. That, and she's a toddler. Usually, abrupt changes in environment cause toddlers to develop behavioral problems, such as saying no more often and having more meltdowns, and sometimes even violent behaviors like hitting and biting. In my opinion, even though she would have learned she can't say no and to always be quiet when with Overhaul, because she's so young and was with him for a shorter period than canon, I think she would adapt faster to her new environment where she can say no and just be a child than canon Eri did. Even though this fic started out at mostly crack, I must do my special interest, possibly just intense interest or hyperfixation, I don't know yet, but it's been about a year, in child development justice by writing my characters realistically. That's it for that end chapter note. The next chapter should be up soon. I hope you enjoyed this one, and thank you so much for listening.